Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and this is a tutorial on how to draw clouds. Clouds can be one of the most satisfying subjects to draw because they are so ephemeral and allow for a lot of imagination on your part. For this tutorial, I use Strathmore charcoal paper, which has a little tooth to it, so therefore it works well for charcoal drawing. I also use a short stick of charcoal as well as a Faber-Castell eraser. I recommend using a stick of soft vine charcoal and breaking it into a smaller size stick, like I show here. I do this because I only use the flat side of the charcoal so that I can make large marks on my paper. I do not want to make drawing lines, but rather create tonal areas of light and dark in my drawing. Now I start by drawing the lower shadow part of my first cloud. There are never going to be perfectly straight lines when it comes to drawing clouds. So I try to observe the irregular silhouette shape of the lower part of the cloud against the lighter area above it. Because clouds are incredibly soft, we need to reflect that softness in our drawing. So using your fingers to rub on the charcoal drawing helps to soften the texture and the edges around the cloud. After drawing the shadow area of the cloud, I now proceed to drawing the silhouette of the upper part of the cloud. And I continue to soften edges as I go with my finger. As you can see, there are no real lines in this cloud drawing, so using that flat side of the charcoal stick is really useful for laying down areas of light and shadow. I continue to draw the sky that is around the cloud. As mentioned before, I pay close attention to the silhouette shape around the upper side of the cloud. I also use my finger to create a soft edge between the bottom part of the cloud and the sky. This is where you can work on making the cloud feel like it is in the sky. A big part of learning how to draw a cloud is to create specific shadow shapes. The value tones and shapes in a cloud are incredibly subtle and require a lot of close observation to draw in a convincing way. In the video, you can see how I looked for the precise shapes of the shadows in the cloud. I also paid attention to the parts of the shadow that are a little darker and which areas are a little lighter. I also turn my attention towards drawing the sky around the cloud. It is important to not completely finish the cloud and then draw the sky area. Rather, when drawing clouds, it is best to draw the cloud and sky together at the same time, because you want the cloud to feel like it is part of the sky. Now I expand the drawing to include another cloud. I roughly outline the cloud by drawing the sky area around it with the flat side of my charcoal. The lower part of the cloud is the darkest because this is the shadow area of the cloud. I leave the lightest areas of the lower cloud free from any charcoal. For areas that are just a little darker than the brightest areas, I rub in a very small amount of charcoal. I also still continue to find the shape and silhouette of the cloud as I work on drawing the sky around it. I also revisit a cloud that I already worked on, and I work on reinforcing the shadow area that is on the lower part of the cloud. And again, you can see how useful it is to use your fingers to make the clouds really feel like they're in the sky. Often you will actually have a bit of charcoal on your finger, which can be useful sometimes in creating really soft, subtle shadow areas on your clouds. Also, I continue to draw the silhouette that is around that lower cloud on the lower part of my drawing, while at the same time drawing the sky that's around the cloud. Using an eraser is really useful when drawing clouds because they help to create bright areas in a drawing like I just did there. Now here again, I search for shadow shapes that are inside the cloud and I make them really specific. Now I do very similar things for this lower cloud as I did for the cloud above, except for that the shape is different. That's the main thing that is different between the two. And again, notice how well the eraser works to mark out really bright light areas in the cloud. You will use your eraser just as much as your charcoal when drawing clouds. I use my fingers to rub the charcoal into the paper to soften the clouds, But I also want to make the sky a little lighter as it was becoming a little bit too dark in the previous step. Using your fingers to rub the charcoal on the paper is not just useful for creating soft edges, but also to lighten your drawing. When you rub your fingers on the drawing, you're effectively taking charcoal off of your paper. And I continue to lighten on the right side of my drawing by rubbing my fingers onto my paper. And I draw the upper part of the sky by using the flat side of my charcoal as I've done throughout the whole process of this drawing. As I do that, I reinforce the silhouette that is on the upper part of the cloud. Now we work on drawing another cloud by drawing a darker sky that surrounds a lighter shadow area. This shadow area will eventually turn into a cloud. You can see more closely here how I create a very specific shadow shape around the cloud. While at the same time I also focus on creating hard and soft edges around the cloud as well. As I draw more of the sky, more of my third cloud is revealed that is to the right of my upper cloud. Even though most of the cloud is in shadow, it still shows up because it is lighter than the sky. And again, you can witness the usefulness of an eraser for how it lightens areas. Just be sure to get rid of any residue that it leaves behind. I create a sharp edge on the right side of the upper cloud so that the upper area of the cloud stands out more. After erasing and creating very light areas, I still want to create soft edges between the lighter shadow areas and the really, really light areas that were just erased. It is all important to find shadow shapes when drawing clouds. It is these shadow shapes that help to create the shape of the clouds. For example, notice how I'm searching for the shadow shapes in the video. When working on this stage of the drawing, I work on creating very specific shadow shapes. The more specific I am, the more real and convincing the clouds will be. And using an eraser is a really great way of carving out those lighter areas in the clouds. I then use my charcoal stick to draw the shadow shape around the lighter parts of the cloud. And here I draw the lower shadow part that is so often seen on the underside of clouds. An eraser is not just useful for making some areas very light and bright, but it can also be used to make an area just slightly lighter by lightly grazing the eraser across the paper. I now work on drawing the sky area on the upper part of my drawing. This also makes me define the shape of the upper part of my large and small cloud. I make the upper part of my sky darker in value because doing this makes it feel closer in terms of space. The lower part of the sky is further away and therefore lighter in value. If you look at a sky, you will notice that the part of the sky that is closer to you is darker, while that which is further away on the horizon is lighter. I now work at figuring out the outer shape of my large cloud so it can complete the sky on the right side of my drawing. After finishing the outer silhouette of my large cloud, I completely drew in the right part of the sky with a medium value. I work at refining some of the shapes on the upper part of my first cloud. Here I am darkening the area beneath that first cloud in an effort to get the value right. A big part of drawing clouds is to play around until you figure something out and get it right. There are many times that I put something in only to change it later. I create a distinctive shape in the cloud. Having a sharp edge creates some variety next to a lot of soft edges. In an effort to make the cloud look like it is more part of the sky, I rub the lower shadow part of the cloud against the sky. This creates a soft edge and blends the two together. Here, I create a sharp edge on the upper part of the big cloud. This helps for that area to feel like it is more forward. Here, I work on creating a more distinct shadow area on the lower part of the cloud. And now work on creating another smaller sized cloud that is beneath the large cloud on the right side of the drawing. As I did before, I look for the silhouette on the outside part of the cloud by drawing it with my stick of charcoal. As you've probably noticed, it is important to keep on returning to other areas in the drawing, as I'm doing here by drawing shadow shapes in my cloud. By doing this, I'm working on my drawing as a whole, and in the end, everything will work together because I continuously worked on the whole drawing without ignoring any parts. Here, I rub my finger over some shadow areas to soften edges inside the cloud. Speaking of edges, I've mentioned them a lot in this tutorial because they're a really big part of drawing and painting. They're what help you to make certain areas of a cloud look soft, and other areas look sharp and stand out more. Look along the outer edge of your cloud drawing and create sharp edges around the areas that should stand out more, and for the areas that should be soft, use your fingers to smudge the edges of the cloud to soften them up. Now, I look for the darker value shapes within the darker cloud on the right side of my drawing. By drawing out specific dark shapes, it helps me to create some dimension and make it look more like a cloud. Also, because it is darker in value and has soft edges, the cloud recedes back in space and sits behind the other clouds. I also mentioned using an eraser a lot in this cloud drawing tutorial. Now this might sound very counterintuitive, however using the eraser is an important tool when it comes to sketching clouds. Notice in the video how I use my eraser to create a light highlight area in the upper part of my cloud. If I use my fingers to get rid of the charcoal, I would only create a light smudge area. The eraser on the other hand allows me to create a bright highlight area in the cloud. You can create sharp edges with an eraser as well. The eraser can carve out areas on the outer edge of the cloud to create these hard edges. But besides just working on the edges between the outer part of the cloud and the sky, it is also important to pay attention to the edges within the clouds. When drawing the edges within a cloud, you are able to make your cloud appear to have more dimension. Notice here how I sharpen the outer edges on the clouds. Again, I reinforced the bottom shadow part of the large cloud. I turn my attention back to the small lower cloud that is beneath the large cloud. I lighten certain areas with my eraser and darken other areas with my charcoal. And finally, I fill in the remaining white part of the paper in the lowest part of the drawing. I keep it light in value so that it will recede back in space. I also put down the lower shadow area on the small cloud. This helps to give it some dimension and space. Here's a good example of how to create some very subtle light value shape areas with an eraser, as I'm doing here on the upper cloud. It makes a difference to give the cloud some volume. I decided to make the dark cloud shape on the right side of the drawing less distinct, and therefore rubbed it with my finger. This created very soft edge areas, making it recede even further back in space. In contrast, this helps for my large lower cloud to stand out more and look closer to the viewer. Here I create a sharp edge using my eraser on the interior part of the large cloud. This helps to give it a greater sense of volume. As I work on wrapping up the drawing, I darken part of the sky that is still too light on the upper right area. I continue to touch up areas all around the drawing as I near the end by lightening and darkening certain parts. Before I call the drawing complete, I make sure that it works together as a whole. I ask myself two very important questions. The first one is there a sense of space in the drawing? In other words, are there parts of the drawing that feel like that are coming forward and certain areas that are receding back in space? The second question I ask myself is, does my cloud drawing have a visible sense of light and dark? This second question is very important because you want to have that sense of light in your drawing. If you do not feel like you have a sense of light in your drawing, take a closer look at your reference, whether you're looking at a real sky or a photograph. Compare the light and dark values of it to your own drawing. Find out what you're missing and make the adjustments. You can find more help related to this in the description below. Thank you for watching this cloud drawing tutorial. I hope that it inspired you to draw some clouds yourself. Clouds are a really fun subject to work with because you can make up so much of it. If you have any questions at all, you can leave them in the comment section below. I will see you in the next video.